Close your eyes. Let the world fade. Let the weight on your shoulders soften. And let's go far, far back in time to a world shaped by whispers and wonders, before the empires, before the marble cities, before legions marched across continents. There was only a river, a gentle, glistening current. The Tiber, it flowed under golden skies, through lands untouched by kingdoms, resting between 7 quiet hills. And on one of those hills, a she-wolf stirred. She had no name, no pack, no past, only 2 children curled beneath her, their skin warm against her fur, their breath steady with sleep. She had found them by the river, abandoned, tiny, crying. They didn't belong to her, but something ancient within her said, "Protect them." And so she did. The boys would one day be called Romulus and Remus, but for now, they were just infants, dreaming under stars. The world around them was soft. Forests swayed like lullabies. The moon lit their path with silver hushes. They drank from the she-wolf's milk, played in mossy groves, and chased shadows between trees. It was not a life of royalty, but it was filled with rhythm and warmth. In time, a shepherd named Faustulus found them. He and his wife took the boys in, taught them to speak, to run, to wonder. But legends don't stay small forever. One day, the boys learned the truth. They weren't orphans. They were the sons of Rhea Silvia, a princess forced into silence, and Mars, the god of war. A spark lit inside them, a feeling they didn't have before. Not hunger, not fear, but purpose. They grew tall, strong, curious, and when they reached manhood, they returned to the hills where the she-wolf once guarded them. They wanted to build a home, a city, not for kings, not for war, but for people, for legacy. But 2 brothers, 2 dreams. Romulus saw the city on one hill, Remus on another. Words became arguments. Arguments became anger. One morning, as the mist still clung to the grass, Romulus raised a wall. Remus mocked it. And in that moment, history shifted. Romulus struck Remus. A single blow. His brother fell and did not rise again. Silence swept the hill. Romulus stood alone. The wind stilled. Even the birds didn't sing. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just kept building. And in honor of that sorrow, that sacrifice, that dream, he named the city Rome. Rome, born not of gold or conquest, but of grief, of blood, and of belief. Romulus ruled for many years. Some say he disappeared into the storm. Others say the gods took him to the heavens. But the city remained, and it grew. It started with shepherds, runaways, fugitives. All found refuge in Rome's shadow. It was a city for the lost, a place where new stories could begin. So, rest now, traveler. Let your thoughts drift with the Tiber. Let the howl of the she-wolf echo in your dreams. Let the fire of the first walls flicker in your memory. Because Rome has only just begun. Sleep clings to your body like a warm blanket. The night deepens, and the city of Rome awakens, but not in noise, not in fire, in ideas, in the quiet minds of people who wanted something new. After Romulus, 6 more kings ruled Rome. They built temples, dug sewers, and welcomed gods from distant lands. Yet in time, as it always does, power soured. The last king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, known as Tarquin the Proud, ruled not with love, but with fear. He silenced the Senate, mocked the people. His cruelty was not sudden. It crept, like ivy, growing in every corner. But one act ended it all. His son, arrogant and violent, brought disgrace to a noblewoman named Lucretia. Her pain echoed through the hearts of Romans. She took her life, and the city broke open, not in war, but in revolution. A man named Lucius Junius, Brutus, quiet and steady, stepped forward. He called for an end to kings. No more crowns, no more royal blood. He said, let the people rule themselves. The idea was strange, dangerous, hopeful, and just like that, Rome became a republic. 2 consuls were chosen each year. They shared power. They could veto each other. And if one grew too bold, the other could say, no. The Senate returned. Elders and statesmen debated law, war, and trade. It wasn't perfect, but it was something new in the world. A city ruled not by a king, but by its citizens. And so, the republic grew, brick by brick, law by law, dream by dream. Rome learned to fight, but not just with its swords. It fought with words. It fought with order. It fought with structure. The Romans crafted the 12 tables, the first written code of laws. They were carved into bronze, placed in the forum, where every citizen could read them. No one was above the law. Not a consul, not a senator, not even a god's priest. Justice, slow and firm, took root, but justice needs defending. And so, Rome turned outward toward the wild lands beyond the hills. It fought neighboring tribes, the Sabines, the Etruscans, the Volsci. Each war was bitter, each loss a lesson, each victory a stone in the foundation of greatness. In time, Rome met a people who rivaled them in strength and courage. The Samnites. They were mountain folk, fierce and proud. Rome fought them not once, but 3 times. And with each battle, the Republic learned how to adapt, how to retreat with honor, how to endure. But Rome's greatest enemy still waited beyond the sea. That story comes later. Now, in the heart of the Republic, new voices rose. Cincinnatus, the humble farmer who left his plow to save the state and returned to his field once the danger passed. Camillus, the general who rebuilt Rome after a brutal sack by the Gauls, reminding citizens that walls can fall, but spirit cannot. Rome was still young. It was not yet an empire, not yet the force that would shake continents. But its bones had formed. Its people had tasted freedom, and they would not let go. Tonight, rest easy. Think of a city without kings, a people learning to stand tall, a republic born from loss and built with resolve. Let sleep take you there. Let the stars above the forum flicker gently as your thoughts settle. Let the sound of chariots fade behind you, because tomorrow Rome will rise again. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let your breath slow like a fading drum. The streets of early Rome are silent under the moonlight, but beyond the sea, storms are brewing. Rome had tamed the land. Now it turned to the waters. Across the glittering blue of the Mediterranean, there was another city, older, wealthier, with harbors filled with gold and spices. Carthage, a city of sailors and traders, of ships faster than wind, of gods who watched the tides. Rome and Carthage had never truly spoken, but they had always noticed each other, and in time they would collide. It began with Sicily, a jewel between both worlds. A local conflict drew both cities in. What started as a squabble became the First Punic War. Rome had never fought on water, but Carthage ruled the sea. So Rome, stubborn and bold, captured a Carthaginian ship, studied it, and built a fleet of their own. Hundreds of warships, wood and iron and hope. They trained men not of the sea to become sailors. They added boarding bridges, turning sea battles into land fights. And slowly, through storm and fire, Rome won. Carthage surrendered Sicily. But bitterness grew like rot. 20 years passed, and a child was born in Carthage. His name was Hannibal. Hannibal grew up hating Rome. It wasn't politics. It wasn't greed. It was personal. He swore before the gods to destroy them. And when he became a man, he led his army across Spain, through the mountains, and into Italy, not by ship, but by land, by crossing the Alps. It seemed impossible. Frozen cliffs, snow-blind soldiers, war elephants slipping on ice. But Hannibal made it through, and he brought terror with him. The Second Punic War began, and Rome was shaken. At Cannae, Hannibal slaughtered 50,000 Roman soldiers in a single day. It was a wound Rome never forgot. City after city fell. Allies turned. Fears spread. But Rome did not fall. Instead, it adapted. It studied. It endured. A young general named Scipio rose. Calm, brilliant, patient. While Hannibal rampaged through Italy, Scipio sailed to Africa, right to Carthage's gates. Hannibal was forced to return home, and in the Battle of Zama, Rome won. Carthage was defeated. Again, but not destroyed. That would come later. Many years passed, and Carthage, though weakened, began to rise again, rebuilding, trading, dreaming. Rome saw this as a threat, not to their lands, but to their pride, and so began the Third Punic War. Swift and merciless, Rome attacked, burned, leveled. Carthage was erased, its walls torn down, its people enslaved, its memory turned to ash. Rome was now the master of the Mediterranean, but the cost was heavy. It had learned to fear greatness in others. It had tasted the thrill of dominance, and it had started to believe that all resistance must be crushed. Sleep now, as the waves of the sea turn gentle again. Let the ghosts of Carthage fade. Let the whisper of sails and the clash of oars drift into silence, and know that the Republic, though powerful, had changed, not just in size, but in soul. The sea is calm now. The fires of Carthage have faded, but peace is a fragile thing. Let your body sink deeper. Let your thoughts float freely, because now the battle is not between nations, but between Romans. Rome had conquered the Mediterranean. Its borders stretched farther than ever. But inside the Republic, the air grew heavy. The Senate was proud, but old. The people were angry, but unheard. And generals, became kings in everything but name. It began with wealth. Conquests brought gold, slaves, and power, but not for everyone. The rich grew richer, the poor grew desperate. Farms were abandoned, bread lines grew long. Rome, the republic of laws, started to bend. Then came the voices. The Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, tried to fix the system. They passed laws for land reform, for food, for fairness, but they were killed, not by foreign enemies, but by Roman senators. And so the spiral began. Enter Gaius Marius, a brilliant general, a man of the people. He reformed the army, letting the poor serve. He promised them land, loyalty, and purpose. Then came Lucius Cornelius Sulla, patrician, proud, cold. Marius and Sulla hated each other. Their armies clashed not in distant lands, but in Italy itself. Sulla marched on Rome twice. The streets ran red, and the Republic trembled. From this chaos, 3 names would rise. Crassus, the richest man in Rome. Pompey, the beloved war hero. Julius Caesar, the clever, ambitious outsider. Together, they formed a secret alliance, the first triumvirate. They shared power, divided provinces, used each other. But ambition does not like partners. Crassus died first, in battle, far away. Pompey grew close to the Senate. Caesar grew close to the people. Their friendship cracked. And when the Senate told Caesar to disband his army, he didn't. Instead, he crossed the Rubicon River, whispering the words, Alea iacta est. The die is cast. It was a point of no return. Civil war erupted. Rome versus Rome. Senator versus soldier. Friend versus friend. Pompey fled. Caesar followed. Across Greece, across Egypt, and when it ended, Pompey was dead. Caesar returned, victorious. He became dictator, not for 6 months, but for life. He wore a purple cloak. He sat in a golden chair. He passed laws, gave land, forgave enemies. But some said, he is no longer a Roman. He is a king. And Rome, for all its faults, had killed kings before. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, Caesar entered the Senate. And there, among men he trusted, he was stabbed 23 times by senators, by friends, even by Brutus. He fell beneath the statue of Pompey, and the Republic died a little with him. The streets filled with whispers. Was Caesar too powerful? Or was he Rome's last hope? Sleep now. Let the silence of a fallen giant settle in your thoughts. Let the shadows of Caesar's torchlight fade, and dream of a world waiting to be reborn, not as a republic, but as an empire. The stars hang still above Rome tonight. The echoes of Caesar's final breath still float in the marble halls of the Senate. And yet, a new chapter waits. Let your eyes soften. Let your heart beat slow. Let the city's chaos drift away like smoke over calm water. Julius Caesar was dead, but his name, his legend, had only begun to grow. In his will, he named an heir, a boy, just 18 years old, soft-spoken, sharp-eyed, Gaius Octavius. He took a new name, Gaius Julius Caesar, Octavianus, the adopted son of Caesar. But many would come to call him something else. Augustus? At first, few took him seriously. He was young. He was sickly. He had no army. But Augustus had something more dangerous than swords: patience and purpose. Rome plunged into confusion after Caesar's death. The Senate scrambled. Generals scrambled harder. Octavian made allies fast, including Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal commander, and Lepidus, another power broker. Together, they formed a new triumvirate, and with cold resolve, they hunted Caesar's killers, Brutus and Cassius. At the Battle of Philippi, they ended the last breath of the Republic's defenders. But unity never lasts. Lepidus was pushed aside, and Antony fell in love, not with Rome, but with a queen, Cleopatra. Antony and Cleopatra ruled Egypt together, bold, proud, and distant. They called themselves gods. They minted coins with both their faces, and to Augustus, this was treason. He moved slowly. He gathered the Senate, the people, the veterans. He painted Antony not as a Roman, but as a foreign king. And when the time came, Augustus moved. The final war of the Republic began. At the Battle of Actium, Augustus crushed Antony's fleet. Antony and Cleopatra, cornered in Alexandria, chose death. They would not be paraded. They would not kneel. And so, with no rivals left, Augustus stood alone. But he did not declare himself king. That word was cursed in Rome. Instead, he became the princeps, first citizen. The Senate gave him a new title, Augustus, the revered one. He took power, quietly. He kept the Senate, but made it powerless. He kept elections, but no one dared challenge him. He gave bread to the people, built roads, aqueducts, temples. He ruled not with fear, but with control. And Rome? It thrived. This era was called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For 40 years, Augustus ruled. He expanded the empire, reformed the laws, restored faith in the old gods. He wasn't a warrior like Caesar, but he was a builder, an architect of empire. When he died, he whispered, "I found Rome a city of bricks. I leave it a city of marble." And the people wept. Sleep now, as the golden age begins. Let marble walls gleam in your dreams. Let the name Augustus echo like a lullaby. The Republic was gone, but something eternal had taken its place, an empire. Let your thoughts soften like candlelight. Let the world behind your eyelids open wide. You are safe here, floating gently in time, and before you now stands the gleaming city of Rome, no longer just a republic, but the heart of an empire. The age of Augustus had ended, and with it, the reign of peace he so carefully sculpted. But empires do not vanish when their founders fall. They breathe, they shift, and sometimes they unravel slowly. This is the story of the first imperial family, the Julio-Claudians. Brilliant, broken, and unforgettable. When Augustus died, the people mourned, the Senate praised him, and Rome wondered who could possibly follow. His stepson, Tiberius, was chosen, not charming, not warm, but a soldier, disciplined, quiet, secretive. Tiberius had no hunger for crowds or cheers. He rarely smiled. He ruled with a heavy hand and an anxious heart. In his early years, Rome stayed steady. The frontiers were held. The treasury remained full. But as years passed, Tiberius grew distant, paranoid. After the death of his beloved son, he withdrew almost entirely, retreating to the island of Capri, high above the sea. There he ruled, from afar, sending letters and spies, and Rome held its breath, because when an emperor hides, others step into the light. One man rose in Tiberius's shadow, a commander of the guard. His name was Sejanus. He smiled in public, whispered in private, and tightened his grip around the Senate. He imprisoned rivals, silenced critics, built his power inch by inch. For a moment, it seemed Sejanus might rule all of Rome. But Tiberius, ever watchful, struck from Capri. Sejanus was arrested, dragged from the Senate, executed, and Tiberius trusted no one ever again. He died alone, old, suspicious, and weary. And in his place came someone very different. The people called him Caligula. His real name was Gaius, the son of Germanicus, a beloved general. But as a child, Gaius wore a tiny soldier's uniform while traveling with the legions. They called him Caligula, Little Boots. The name stuck. When he became emperor, the crowds cheered wildly. He gave out money, held games, honored his family. Rome rejoiced for about 3 months, and then everything changed. Some say he fell ill, a fever, a seizure. Others say power simply revealed what was always hidden. But Caligula became unpredictable, cruel, theatrical, untouchable. He declared himself a living god, built a golden bridge to walk across the bay, appointed his horse Incitatus as a priest, and nearly made him a consul. He mocked senators, executed nobles, turned temples into stages for his ego. To Rome, it was not rule, it was chaos in a crown. And one day, the guards could take no more. In a quiet hallway, they struck, the emperor fell, and history shivered. Who would rise now? A man stepped forward, limping, stammering, often overlooked. His name was Claudius, Caligula's uncle. The Senate laughed. The nobles doubted. But Claudius surprised them all. He was a scholar, a writer, a thinker, and though he limped and lisped, his mind was sharp. He restored order. He revived laws. He fed the people. He built aqueducts and expanded the empire, even invading Britain, a land many believed unreachable. He ruled with reason, but like all emperors, he could not rule his own household. His wives plotted, his courtiers whispered, and one wife, Agrippina the Younger, had plans of her own. She wanted her son to rule. That son was Nero. Claudius died, perhaps poisoned. The details remain uncertain. But Nero rose to the throne as a teenager. At first, he was guided well. He sang, wrote poetry, and walked among the people. He reduced taxes, freed slaves, gave public performances. Rome dared to hope. But power, true, absolute power, is a mirror that cracks easily. Nero soon lost his way. He feared conspiracies. He executed his own mother, then his tutor, then his wife. In 64 CE, Rome caught fire. For 9 days, flames devoured the city. Temples burned. Markets collapsed. People screamed. Rumors spread. Did Nero start the fire himself to silence the whispers? Nero blamed a small, strange religious sect, Christians, and so began one of history's earliest persecutions. Nero built a golden palace on the ruins. He performed on stage as Rome suffered. The people grew restless. The Senate plotted. And in the end, the army, Rome's true power, turned against him. Alone, abandoned, Nero fled. He whispered his final words, "What an artist dies in me." And then, silence. The Julio-Claudian line was over. Rome had known emperors who hid, who dazzled, who built, and who burned. And now it had no emperor at all. Sleep now, under the shadow of palaces and ghosts. Let the masks fall away. Let the madness drift like smoke. Because in the chaos to come, Rome would learn a new truth. Sometimes, emperors are chosen not by blood, but by the blade. The sun has not yet risen. The marble streets of Rome lie quiet, but in the shadows, swords have been drawn. Sleep wraps softly around your thoughts, but Rome cannot rest, for the throne is empty. Nero is gone, and with him, the last of the Julio-Claudian emperors. No heir, no direction, no plan, only silence and opportunity. In the early days of 69 CE, the empire became a chessboard, but not one played by kings. This was a game of generals, of legions, of chaos. They would call it the Year of the Four Emperors, not as a mark of pride, but of confusion. The first to claim the throne was Galba, an old senator, stern and serious. He was governor of Hispania, and when Nero died, he marched to Rome. The Senate, desperate for order, welcomed him, but the people, they felt nothing. Galba did not give. He took. He cut military bonuses. He executed rivals without trial. He showed no warmth, no generosity, no charm. In the brittle winter of his rule, hope began to crack, and behind him, ambition sharpened its blade. One man watched Galba closely, a younger general, governor of Lusitania. His name was Otho. He had once been close to Nero, fashionable, popular, clever, and now he wanted the crown. Galba had promised to adopt him. Instead, he chose someone else. So Otho did what Romans often did when politics failed. He turned to the army. In the Forum, on a cold January morning, soldiers rushed the emperor's litter. Galba was pulled from his chair. His head was severed and paraded on a spear. The people watched. Some wept, some cheered, and Otho was declared emperor. He lasted just 3 months, for while he held Rome, another storm brewed in the north. In the frozen hills of Germania, another general had been hailed by his troops, Vitellius. He was a man of appetite, for food, for luxury, for praise. But more than anything, he had legions, and legions meant power. Vitellius marched south. Otho tried to stop him, but at the Battle of Bedriacum, the north prevailed. Otho, noble in defeat, took his own life. He wrote a letter asking for no further bloodshed. He left his body quiet, untouched by cruelty, and Vitellius entered Rome. Now the third emperor, Vitellius feasted. He threw games. He drowned in pleasure. But pleasure does not build peace. In the east, yet another general rose, the fourth and final challenger. His name was Vespasian. Vespasian was different, not from a noble line, not soaked in drama or decadence. He was a soldier, steady, practical, respected. He had been fighting a Jewish revolt in Judea when he heard the news from Rome, and the Eastern legions, tired of madness, declared him emperor. Back in Rome, Vitellius panicked. He offered to step down, but his own followers refused. The city spiraled. Streets ran with blood. The Capitoline Hill burned, and on December 20th, Vespasian's men entered the city. Vitellius was dragged through the streets. He was killed brutally, a symbol of how far Rome had fallen in just 1 year. But in that same breath, something shifted. The chaos ended because Vespasian did not seek gold. He sought foundation. He rebuilt the treasury. He restored discipline to the army. He began construction on a new arena, one that would come to define the empire's grandeur. The Colosseum. Sleep now. In the quiet after the storm, let the names drift from your mind. Galba, Otho, Vitellius. Let them fall like dust. Remember only this. Even in confusion, Rome endured. Even through fire, it found form. And in Vespasian, Rome had found not a god, not a monster, but a builder. The fires have dimmed. The blood has dried. The city, scarred, shaken, and still, leans into rest once more. Let your breathing slow. Let your mind step quietly into marble corridors. The storm of the year of the 4 emperors has passed, and in its place, something new begins. Not a golden age, not yet, but a recovery, a slow rebuild, stone by stone, law by law, peace, not as a gift, but as something earned. This is the story of the Flavian dynasty, a family not born in palaces, but born from survival. At its heart stood Vespasian. He was not the son of gods, not descended from ancient lines. He was the son of a tax collector. He worked, he waited, he rose. Now he ruled. Vespasian understood what Rome needed. It did not need feasts. It did not need flattery. It needed foundations. The treasury was empty. The army was restless. The city still smoldered from Nero's fires and Vitellius's collapse. Vespasian got to work. He cut waste. He taxed luxury. He restored stability. And then he did something else. He began building. In the very heart of Rome, where Nero's golden palace once sprawled, Vespasian ordered a new monument, not to himself, but to the people, a grand amphitheater, oval in shape, staggering in scale, made not of gold, but stone. The Flavian amphitheater. We call it today the Colosseum. It would take years to complete, but it began under Vespasian's hands, hands that once held swords. Now they held blueprints, a place for games, for gladiators, for spectacles, bread and entertainment, tools of unity, tools of peace. The empire, fed and distracted, slowly began to heal. Vespasian ruled for 10 years, steady, quiet, effective. And when he fell ill, he joked from his deathbed, "Oh dear, I think I'm becoming a god." Then he closed his eyes and left behind something rare, a peaceful succession. His eldest son, Titus, took the purple next. Titus had already made a name for himself, a general, a diplomat, a charmer. But his rule, would be brief, just 2 years, and yet those 2 years left a mark. In 79 CE, Mount Vesuvius erupted, a mountain roared, ash fell like snow, and in moments the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum were frozen in time, people encased in stone, homes buried beneath silence. Titus responded swiftly, sending aid, coordinating relief. Then, the next year, a massive fire swept through Rome, and soon after, plague. But Titus did not abandon his people. He walked among them, offered comfort, spent the treasury not on monuments, but on recovery. He was beloved, and when he died, young and suddenly, all of Rome mourned. Then came his brother, Domitian, and Rome exhaled. Domitian had watched all his life, overshadowed by his father's order, outshone by his brother's charm. Now it was his turn. At first, he ruled well. He raised soldiers' pay, strengthened the borders, restored temples. But power, when held too tightly, turns sharp. Domitian demanded to be called Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. He surrounded himself with spies, executed senators, feared poets and philosophers. He ruled not with justice, but with control. And yet, he built. He completed the Colosseum. He held festivals and games for 100 days. He beautified the city. The people liked him. The elite feared him. And in 96 CE, Domitian was stabbed in his palace. A conspiracy, a clean cut. An era ended. The Flavian dynasty, Vespasian, Titus, Domitian, was over. But they had done something important. They had repaired Rome, replaced madness with marble, despair with design, and blood with bread. Tonight, sleep inside the walls of the Colosseum. Let the cheers fade softly into the wind. Let the roar of lions drift far away. Let the mountain of Vesuvius settle beneath the stars. The empire has found its rhythm once more, but ahead lies a new kind of ruler, not a builder, but a philosopher. The night stretches gently across the empire. The skies above Rome are quiet, and the stars, ancient and watchful, return to their steady rhythm. Let your mind settle, like dust on marble floors. Let your breathing fall in line with the beating heart of a civilization, learning not just to survive, but to thrive. The storms of madness have passed. The builders have built, and now a rare thing happens. Wisdom takes the throne. From 96 to 180 CE, the empire would be ruled not by tyrants, nor fools, nor gamblers of fate, but by 5 men, 5 rulers, 5 shepherds of peace. Later, historians would call them the 5 good emperors. They did not inherit power through blood. They were chosen, adopted, selected for talent, not lineage. Each one left Rome better than he found it. And their names, if you listen closely, still echo in every corner of the ancient world. It began with Nerva, old, wise, gentle. He had lived through chaos and survived. When Domitian was assassinated, it was Nerva the Senate turned to. He accepted reluctantly, like a man accepting a burden, not a crown. Nerva re-established freedoms. He returned property seized under tyranny. He calmed the army, but he was frail. He knew he could not rule long, and so he did something few had done before. He chose a successor, not his son, but a soldier, a man respected by the legions. His name was Trajan. When Nerva died, Trajan became emperor, and with him the empire stretched its limbs. Trajan was strong, tall, kind-eyed, but sharp. He marched with his men, slept in their tents, ate their food. He built roads across distant lands. He pushed the empire's borders farther than ever before, into Dacia, across the Danube, even toward Persia. He was a conqueror, but not for glory alone. He built markets, repaired aqueducts, fed the poor with grain programs, and in the heart of the city, he raised a monument, Trajan's Column, spiraling upward in carved marble. It told the story of victory, not in blood, but in stone. When he died, his ashes were placed beneath it, a soldier resting in the shadow of his story. Next came Hadrian, Trajan's adopted heir, a thinker, a wanderer. Hadrian did not want to expand. He wanted to protect. He traveled the empire himself, more than any emperor before him, from Britannia to Egypt, from Greece to Gaul. He walked the roads, spoke with citizens, inspected forts, admired temples. He built walls. The most famous, Hadrian's Wall, cut across the wild north of Britain. It was not just a barrier, but a message. This is Rome. Beyond is not. He loved Greece, adopted their gods, their art, their language. In Athens, he built a library. In Rome, he raised the Pantheon anew. Its great dome still stands, a circle of light above an empire's memory. Hadrian, too, chose an heir, a quiet man, calm, decent. His name was Antoninus Pius. He ruled for 23 years, without war, without crisis, without scandal. His reign is often forgotten, but only because peace does not shout. Under him, Rome flourished. Laws were refined. Injustice was reduced. Slaves were granted protections. Children were given rights. He was patient, generous, and kind. He earned the name Pius for his loyalty and love of virtue. When Antoninus grew old, he passed the empire to 2 adopted sons, but one died young, and the other would become the last of the 5, the philosopher king, Marcus Aurelius. You may know him, not from conquest, but from his words. He wrote by candlelight, in distant military camps, in silence. Meditations, a book not meant to be published, but read today across the world. Lines of thought, of doubt, of discipline. He asked not how to rule the world, but how to rule himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He did not seek war, but war came to him from the wild tribes of the Danube. He fought them with skill and sorrow, never in love with battle. He ruled through plague. He ruled through grief. He ruled through weariness. And still, he wrote soft, meditative thoughts, like lullabies from the edge of the empire. When he died, the people wept, and the golden chapter closed. Sleep now, in the shade of columns and quiet minds. Let the soft echo of Marcus's pen fill your dreams. Let Hadrian's footsteps guide you through gardens. Let Trajan's chariots roll in victory, not in vanity. 5 men, chosen not for blood, but for wisdom. And for a while, Rome remembered what greatness could be. the age of light fades gently, the gold softens into bronze, and in the hush that follows greatness, a shadow begins to stir. Let your eyes drift closed, and your thoughts loosen their grip. The empire still stands. The roads still stretch like veins across continents. But something has changed. The last of the 5 good emperors, Marcus Aurelius, is gone. And for the first time in a century, the throne does not pass to an adopted heir, but to a son. His name was Commodus, tall, striking, a natural heir in appearance, but beneath the surface, a very different soul. While his father pondered virtue, Commodus chased pleasure. While Marcus spoke softly of duty, Commodus roared for attention. He was just 18 when he took power, and Rome, still glowing with the wisdom of the previous emperors, hoped that perhaps the son might rise to the father's legacy. But Commodus did not want to rule as a philosopher. He wanted to rule as a god. At first, his advisors tried to guide him, veteran generals, sober senators, but Commodus had no interest in counsel. He surrounded himself with flatterers, performers, and yes-men. Those who resisted, dismissed, exiled, silenced, and soon the empire's careful balance began to sway. Commodus loved games. Not the games of state, the games of the arena. He saw himself not as a ruler, but a gladiator. He trained with swords. He posed as Hercules, wearing lion skins, carrying a club. He fought in the Colosseum, sometimes daily, but his opponents, they were unarmed, or wounded, or paid to fall. The crowds were confused. Was this theater or madness? He renamed the months after himself. He demanded temples in his honor. He claimed he was the new Romulus, the new sun god, the new hope of Rome. But the streets whispered, this was not hope. This was hubris. The city changed, too. Lavish parties replaced public works. Taxes rose to fund spectacles. Justice grew hollow, bought and sold behind velvet curtains. Behind the painted walls of power, the empire began to crack. Assassination attempts followed, more than one. Each time, Commodus became more paranoid, more brutal, more isolated. He executed senators on rumor alone. He turned the palace into a stage. He walked in gold, while the provinces struggled. Rome had grown fat and fragile. But empires are not just emperors. They are built by soldiers, farmers, merchants, and even those can only bend so far. In the final days of his reign, Commodus declared that Rome would be renamed Colonia Commodiana, the colony of Commodus. Streets, temples, even the legions, he wanted them to carry his name. The Senate gasped. Even his own guards rolled their eyes, and quietly, they began to plan. On New Year's Eve, 192 CE, Commodus prepared for a grand appearance. He would enter the arena dressed as a gladiator, again. But that night, his mistress, his Praetorian commander, and his wrestling partner plotted together. They poisoned his wine. He vomited, but survived. So they sent in the wrestler to strangle him. And just like that, the emperor, who thought himself a god, was gone. Rome exhaled, but the damage lingered. Commodus had ruled for 12 years. 12 years of ego over empire, of performance over policy. The Golden Age had ended not with a battle, but with a laughing crowd and a man in costume. Now, there was no heir, no plan. The Senate rushed to restore order, naming Pertinax, a respected old general, as emperor. But the Praetorian Guard, those sworn to protect, had grown greedy. They murdered Pertinax after just 3 months, and then, shockingly, they auctioned the throne to the highest bidder. A senator named Didius Julianus offered the most gold. He became emperor, not through birth, nor battle, but bribery. The people rioted, the legions raged. Rome had never felt so cheap. But in the provinces, 3 powerful generals rose, each with armies, each claiming the throne. The empire once more teetered on the edge of civil war. Tonight, let your thoughts drift gently across the flickering torches of the Colosseum. Let the sound of wooden swords fade into memory. Let the golden name of Marcus Aurelius whisper behind you as the shadow of Commodus stretches forward. Not all declines come in flames. Some arrive in velvet robes, smiling. The fire has dimmed, but not gone out. Rome's streets still hum with unrest. The throne, once gilded with philosophy, now flickers with uncertainty. And yet, amid the noise, footsteps approach, not of a senator, not of a noble son, but of a soldier, a man born far from Rome's shining hills, from Leptis Magna in the east heart of Africa. His name was Septimius Severus, and soon all of Rome would know it. Let your mind settle as soft winds blow across the sands of North Africa. Feel the dust of the legion's march. Feel the calm before change. In the chaos after Commodus, generals began circling like hawks. The Praetorian Guard, those who sold the empire to the highest bidder, had installed Didius Julianus, a rich senator, as emperor. But the provinces revolted. 3 generals marched toward Rome, each with armies, each with ambition, and only one would reach the city first. Septimius Severus. He was no stranger to politics, no stranger to blood. Years of military service had hardened his hands, but his mind stayed sharp. He swept into Rome not with chaos, but with calm dominance. He executed Julianus, disbanded the treacherous Praetorian Guard, replaced them with his own loyal soldiers, and the Senate, they bowed, because Rome, now more than ever, belonged to those with swords. Severus faced down the remaining rivals. Pescennius Niger, in the east, defeated. Clodius Albinus, in the west, crushed in Gaul. One by one, challengers fell. By 197 CE, the empire was his, and he ruled it not as a scholar, but as a commander. He was a soldier's emperor. He raised military pay, allowed soldiers to marry, lavished rewards on the legions, and in return, they gave him loyalty. He once said to his sons, "Enrich the soldiers and despise all others." He did not trust the Senate. He ruled from the army, not the forum. He saw Rome not as a republic, nor even a city, but as a barracks with borders. Still, Severus was no brute. He expanded rights for provincials, promoted men of all backgrounds, built monuments, and strengthened the empire's legal system. He campaigned in the east. He waged war in Africa, and when he grew older, he marched north to Britannia, in the cold rains of the British Isles, Severus waged his final war. He wanted to conquer Caledonia, what we now call Scotland, but the hills were harsh, the tribes relentless, the cold unkind. His health failed. The year 211 CE, Septimius Severus died in the northern city of Iberacum, now called York. He was wrapped in cloaks and buried with honors, and beside him stood his sons, Caracalla and Geta. They were meant to rule together, but like Romulus and Remus before them, two brothers cannot share one crown. Caracalla, restless and cold, soon made his move. He had Geta murdered in their mother's arms. Blood spilled in the imperial palace. He then declared himself sole emperor, and all images of Geta were erased. Paintings scraped clean, statues smashed, names chiseled from stone. It was called damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, as if forgetting could heal what betrayal had done. Caracalla ruled with iron. He gave all free men in the empire Roman citizenship, a sweeping gesture, perhaps for taxes, perhaps for legacy, but his name became feared. He built baths, massive, beautiful structures, still standing today, but he also waged costly wars, and his paranoia grew sharp. In 217 CE, he was assassinated on the road by his own soldiers. The Severan dynasty stumbled on, brief emperors, civil strife, corruption rising like mold beneath marble. By 235 CE, the Severan line collapsed, and Rome entered a new phase, a phase without stability, without legacy, a time of swords without oaths, crowns without heads. But for a moment, think of Septimius Severus, the outsider, the soldier, the man who seized power not by birth, but by will. He tried to forge something solid, to restore control, to lead through discipline. And though his sons faltered, his shadow remained. Sleep now under the northern sky, where Severus breathed his last. Let the clang of swords fade into frost. Let the lions rest in their cages. Let Rome sleep too, just for a moment, because what comes next is chaos. Let your breath rise and fall like ocean waves. Let your thoughts loosen their grip. Tonight, we enter a darker chapter, not filled with triumph, but with turbulence. The empire still stands, but it no longer walks with confidence. It staggers, and though the statues still gleam, the marble is beginning to crack. This is the crisis of the 3rd century, a time when Rome didn't have one enemy, but dozens, within, without, all at once. It began in 235 CE, when the last of the Severan line was killed by his own troops. He was replaced not by a senator, nor a statesman, but a soldier named Maximinus Thrax, a giant of a man, over 6.5 feet tall, a former herdsman turned general. He never even stepped foot in Rome during his reign. His rule was harsh and short. He was assassinated after just 3 years, and thus began a terrifying pattern. Emperors rising and falling like the turning of leaves. In the span of just 50 years, Rome would see over 25 emperors. Some ruled for years, many for only days. Most were chosen by the army. Some declared themselves. Others were puppets. Few died naturally. The frontiers were bleeding. In the north, Germanic tribes pushed hard against the Rhine and Danube. In the east, the Persian Sassanid Empire rose like a storm. The Emperor Valerian, once proud and steady, led a campaign to stop the Persians. He was captured in battle, taken alive. What happened next? History only whispers. Some say he was kept as a trophy, others that he was killed and stuffed, his skin tanned as a warning to Rome. Whatever the truth, he never returned. Back in the west, plague gripped the empire. The cities fell silent. Markets emptied. Fields went untilled. Some called it divine punishment. Others, just fate. But Rome was gasping, and yet still breathing, because in the darkness, lights flickered. Cities began protecting themselves. Local leaders rose. Towns built walls. Governors took charge. The empire, once centralized, now looked more like a patchwork of half-independent territories. At one point, Rome fractured completely. In the west, a breakaway Gallic empire emerged, stretching across Gaul, Britain, and parts of Spain. In the east, the city of Palmyra, led by the brilliant Queen Zenobia, formed its own empire. She ruled with grace and intellect. She claimed descent from Cleopatra, and for a while, she held Syria, Egypt, and much of Asia Minor. Rome was split in three, but even in its weakest moment, it did not collapse, because one man from the Balkans, a cavalry commander, would rise. His name was Aurelian, and his mission was to restore unity. He marched first to the east, fought Zenobia, defeated her with respect and precision. She was captured, brought to Rome, but not killed. Instead, Aurelian spared her. She lived in peace, perhaps even teaching Roman women and nobles. Then he turned west, crushed the Gallic Empire, restored the borders. The Senate gave him a title not used in centuries, Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world. He built new city walls around Rome, the Aurelian walls, massive, enduring. Even today, fragments still stand, but Aurelian's reign, like so many others, was cut short. He was assassinated by his own officers. Mistaken rumors, paranoia, another tragedy. Still, he had done the impossible. For a moment, Rome was whole again, not healed, but held together. This century had broken much: the illusion of eternal peace, the confidence of the Senate, the stability of succession, but it had also revealed something deeper. Rome was resilient, not because of one man, not because of any god, but because of its people, its merchants, its farmers, its engineers, its legionnaires. And in their hands, the empire endured. Sleep now, beneath the shifting sky. Let the names blur, let the chaos soften. Let Aurelian's heavy footsteps echo quietly through your dreams. The worst had come, but the light, however faint, was returning. The empire breathes, not fully healed, not fully safe, but breathing again. Let your mind drift into calm. The wars have paused, the fires smolder less, and through the smoke, a figure emerges, a man, not born in palaces, not raised in marble halls, but hardened in battle. His name is Diocletian, and what he does next will reshape Rome forever. It is the late 3rd century. Rome has survived plague, betrayal, invasion, and fracture. But barely. The borders are fragile. The treasury is drained. The gods feel distant. The throne, still a prize to be bought or seized, never secured. Diocletian sees the pattern and decides to break it. Born in Dalmatia, to humble parents, he rose through the military ranks, tough, calculating, patient. When the emperor Carus and his heirs fell, Diocletian claimed the purple. He took it not with fanfare, but with purpose. He understood something few had accepted. Rome was too big for one man, so he split it, not in anger, not as surrender, but as strategy. He appointed a trusted general, Maximian, as his co-emperor. One would rule the east, the other, the west. But that wasn't enough. In 293 CE, Diocletian expanded the plan. He created the Tetrarchy, ruled by two senior emperors, Diocletian in the east, Maximian in the west, and 2 juniors, called Caesars, to assist and succeed them, Galerius and Constantius. It was clean, organized, orderly. Each man had his region, his palace, his army. They weren't rivals, they were partners, in theory. With this new structure, Diocletian began to reform everything. He divided the provinces more efficiently, nearly doubling them, so no governor held too much power. He strengthened frontier defenses, increased recruitment in the legions, fixed tax systems. He tried to stop inflation with an edict on maximum prices, a bold attempt to control runaway markets. He rebuilt cities, established new administrative centers, and he launched a new image campaign. The emperor was no longer just a man. He was a living symbol, the chosen of the gods. Diocletian wore robes of purple and gold. He appeared in ceremony, rarely in public. He adopted the title Dominus, Lord. The days of first among equals were gone. Now, the emperor was divine. But not all of Diocletian's reign was progress. He believed deeply in the old gods, and when he saw Christianity spreading quietly, persistently, he felt it threatened Rome's unity. So he ordered one of the last and most brutal persecutions. Churches destroyed, scriptures burned, Christians imprisoned or killed. It did not end the faith. It only deepened its resilience. Still, Diocletian held the empire together. For 20 years, he ruled with discipline. And then, he did something no emperor had ever done. He retired. Willingly, he walked away from power to a palace in Split, modern Croatia, where he tended gardens. When asked later if he would return to rule, he replied, "If you could see the cabbages I grow, you wouldn't ask me that." But the Tetrarchy did not last. Power, once divided, still tempted men to grasp more. The junior Caesars began to maneuver. Rivalries grew. Battles flared. Within a decade, Rome would again be under siege. This time, not from enemies outside, but from ambition within. Still, Diocletian's legacy was not failure. He proved Rome could be restructured, not just worshipped. That strength didn't come from marble, but from management, and he planted a seed, a new idea of what Rome could become. One man who watched all this, a young son of Constantius, one of the Caesars, would carry that seed forward. His name was Constantine, and the winds of change were stirring once more. Sleep now, in the stillness of reform. Let the sound of four rulers whisper balance. Let the gold-trimmed robes fall silent. Let the empire, however briefly, feel stable, because beyond this peace lies a new religion, a new capital, and a new kind of emperor. The moonlight rests quietly over Rome. Its temples still stand, but the fires inside them flicker less often. Something is shifting. Let your thoughts slow. Let your breath settle. Tonight, the story changes, not with a sword, but with a sign in the sky. A new emperor waits just beyond the horizon, and with him, a new world is born. His name is Constantine. The tetrarchy, designed with logic and care, has fallen into chaos. After Diocletian's retirement, the partnership unraveled. Too many Caesars, too many claims, too many ambitions. And in the middle of this rising storm, a young man named Constantine saw his moment. He was the son of Constantius, the former Caesar of the West, raised in courts, trained by generals, trusted by soldiers. When his father died in 306 CE, Constantine's troops declared him emperor. But Rome didn't work that way anymore. Other rulers objected. Civil war returned. One by one, rivals rose. And one by one, Constantine defeated them. But the most famous moment of his rise would come before the gates of Rome itself. In 312 CE, he faced his final challenger, Maxentius, a cruel tyrant who had taken Rome for himself. As Constantine prepared to fight at the Milvian Bridge, he saw something in the sky, a vision, a cross of light, and the words, "In hoc signo vinces." In this sign, you will conquer. That night, he had a dream. A voice told him to paint the Chi-Rho, a symbol of Christ, on his soldiers' shields. He obeyed, and the next day, he won. Maxentius was thrown into the Tiber. Rome opened its gates, and Constantine entered the city as more than a general. He was now emperor of the West. He did not claim total power yet. He still had rivals in the East, but his vision had changed. He now walked with a different purpose. In the years that followed, he fought Licinius, the Eastern emperor, until in 324 CE, he stood alone, sole ruler of the Roman Empire. But unlike those before him, he no longer bowed to Jupiter or Mars. He favored a different god. In 313 CE, even before taking full control, Constantine and Licinius had issued the Edict of Milan, a law that legalized Christianity across the empire. No more hiding, no more secret services, no more fear. Churches were built openly, scriptures copied, crosses lifted. Constantine gave bishops power. He attended councils. He settled disputes within the growing Christian faith. He did not make it the official religion, not yet, but he planted the seed, and from that seed, a forest would grow. Still, Constantine knew Rome's old heart was tired, its streets too narrow, its politics too tangled. So he looked eastward, to a city on the Bosporus, a crossroads between Europe and Asia. Old Greek foundations, new Roman purpose. He rebuilt it, adorned it, filled it with art, palaces, and faith, and in 330 CE, he renamed it Constantinople, the new capital, the new Rome. It would stand for over 1,000 years. Constantine ruled for over 3 decades, and though he remained tied to Roman tradition, wearing purple, issuing coins with Sol Invictus, his heart leaned toward Christ. 337 CE, as death approached, he was baptized, and with that final act, he became the first Christian emperor. His rule marked a turning point. The empire was still strong, but no longer purely Roman. It was becoming something else. Christian, Eastern, transformed. And though the West would fall, Constantine had built something that would last, a flame that would flicker in domes and mosaics for centuries more. Sleep now, beneath the quiet towers of Constantinople. Let the church bells ring softly in your dreams. Let the old gods rest. Let the new world begin. Because Rome is not dying, it is changing. The winds of change blow gently through marble columns. The fires of the old gods dim. The cross now rises on spires once topped with eagles. Close your eyes and feel it. The empire that once ruled all roads now follows too. The reign of Constantine the Great brought peace, prosperity, and transformation. He left behind cities rebuilt, temples replaced, and faith reborn. But he also left behind something less visible, a subtle fracture, because Rome was no longer one. In 337 CE, Constantine died. He was baptized, blessed, and buried in Constantinople. And with his passing, a difficult question returned. Who would rule next? He had 3 sons, 3 heirs, Constantine II, Constantius II. Constans, the empire, was split among them, west, east, middle. But unity, even among brothers, is fragile. The brothers quickly fell into rivalry. Constantine II was killed in battle with Constans. Constans ruled alone for a time, until he too was murdered. And then Constantius II ruled the east and west, alone, until his death in 361 CE. Peace returned, briefly, but Rome's future was now firmly set upon 2 pillars, 2 courts, 2 armies, 2 identities: the Western Empire, Latin, Roman, traditional, and the Eastern Empire, Greek, Christian, evolving. 2 hearts, beating in the same chest, but pulling in different directions. In the West, emperors rose and fell, often puppets of the military. Germanic pressures on the frontier grew stronger. The Senate lost influence. Barbarian tribes pushed through cracks in the borders. In the East, Constantinople grew. It became a city of churches, law, art, and scholarship. Emperors there were not merely generals. They were symbols of divine order, and slowly, the East began to look less like ancient Rome and more like something new. Still, there were moments of hope. One emperor rose briefly, who seemed to defy the tide. His name was Julian, known later as Julian the Apostate. He rejected Christianity and tried to restore the old Roman gods. Temples reopened. Rituals returned. But the movement was short-lived. Julian died in battle in 363 CE, and with him, the old religion faded again into memory. After Julian came Valens in the east, and Gratian and Valentinian in the west. Valens would face a crisis that would haunt the empire. In 376 CE, a tribe appeared at the eastern border. They were the Goths, pushed from their homeland by invading Huns. They begged for refuge, safety, land, food. Valens allowed them in, a humanitarian act. But Roman officials mistreated them, exploited them, starved them, humiliated them. The result was rebellion. In 378 CE, near the town of Adrianople, Valens marched out to face the Gothic army. He did not wait for reinforcements. He underestimated his enemy, and there he fell. The Roman army was slaughtered, 2/3 of it lost. Valens himself died in the flames of a burning farmhouse. It was one of the worst defeats in Roman history. For the first time, Rome had been broken, not by civil war, but by outsiders. Still, the East recovered. It was wealthier, more fortified, more stable. The West struggled. In 395 CE, the empire was formally divided. Theodosius the Firner, the last man to rule both East and West as one, died, and he gave the Eastern Empire to his son Arcadius, and the Western Empire to Honorius. Never again would Rome be ruled by a single hand. From this point forward, the Eastern Roman Empire, with Constantinople as its capital, would slowly evolve into the Byzantine Empire. The Western Roman Empire, with Ravenna as its capital, would continue to shrink year after year. Two empires, one history, different fates. Sleep now beneath a sky stretched between two stars, one rising in the east, golden and strong, one flickering in the west, tired but proud. Let the roads diverge beneath your dreaming feet. Rome is not dead, not yet, but it is no longer whole. The torches still flicker in ancient streets. The statues still stand, worn by time, but proud, and yet the silence is growing. Close your eyes and listen, not to the roar of crowds, but to the echo of what was once great. The Western Roman Empire is not falling like a tower struck by lightning. It is fading, quietly, painfully, like breath from frost-covered lips. This is how it ends. Not in a moment, but in a slow unraveling. It begins with pressure. From the outside, yes, but also from within. The government is fragile. The army, overstretched and increasingly non-Roman. Many legions now fight under the Roman banner, but are made up of Germanic recruits, some loyal, others simply hired swords. The emperors are weak, often puppets, sometimes mere teenagers, and the real power, it lies with generals, warlords, foreign kings knocking at the gates. The capital has moved, not once, but many times, from Rome to Milan, then to Ravenna, a marshy, defensible town, a retreat, not a throne. The Senate still exists, but its voice is little more than a whisper. The empire's wealth has dwindled. The grain ships from Africa are no longer secure. The great roads have grown dangerous. And then the gates open. In 410 CE, it happens. A name Rome had long feared, Alaric, king of the Visigoths, once allies, now enemies. He marches on Rome, and no one stops him. On a dark August night, his forces breach the walls. Rome is sacked. For the first time in 800 years, The eternal city is stormed by a foreign army. Temples are looted, homes burned, wealth taken, but it is not destruction that shocks the world. It is the symbolism. The unthinkable has happened. If Rome can fall, what cannot? The empire does not die that night, but it stumbles. In the years that follow, more tribes come. The Vandals cross into Spain, then into North Africa, cutting off Rome's grain. They seize Carthage in 439 CE, then sail across the sea. In 455 CE, they sack Rome too, this time with greater cruelty. They steal the treasures of centuries. Even the temple of Jupiter is stripped. Emperors rise and fall, most without leaving a mark. Petronius Maximus rules for just 2 months. Avitus for less than a year. Majorian tries to restore strength. He is executed. Anthemius, Olybrius, Glycerius. The names pass like fading shadows. The real ruler behind the scenes is often a general named Ricimer, a barbarian by birth, but kingmaker in Rome. And then comes the last. In 475 CE, a boy is placed on the throne, just a child. His name, Romulus Augustulus, a name echoing the past. Romulus, the legendary founder. Augustus, the first emperor. But this Romulus is emperor in title only. The army no longer answers to him. It answers to Odoacer, a Germanic general tired of Roman games. In 476 CE, Odoacer marches into Ravenna. He does not kill the boy. He simply removes him, sends him into retirement. And then, Odoacer declares himself king of Italy. He sends the imperial regalia back to Constantinople, a polite way of saying, there is no emperor here anymore. And so, the Western Roman Empire ends, not with a final battle, not with fire and ruin, but with resignation. The dream of Caesar and Augustus, the Republic turned empire, the glory of the eternal city, it flickers out, but only in the West. In the East, Rome lives on. In Constantinople, the emperor still reigns. The laws are still enforced. The gold still flows. This is not the death of Rome, but the death of one Rome, a Rome of legions, senators, marble forums, and Latin speech. What remains? Churches, ruins, legends, and the whispers of people who still speak Latin, still call themselves Romans, even as the world around them becomes something new. Sleep now, as the torch is passed. Let the dust settle on the crumbling stones. Let Romulus Augustulus close the heavy doors behind him, and let Odoacer take the crown, not as a Caesar, but as a sign that the old age has ended. Rome has fallen, but only in part. The next morning will rise over the east. The west is quiet now, the eagle banners lowered. The streets of Rome echo only with wind. But in the east, there is light. Let your eyes grow heavy as the golden domes of Constantinople shimmer beneath starlight. Here, the empire is still alive, still dreaming, still building. And in the 6th century, a man is about to rise, one who does not accept the world as it is, but dares to shape it as it was. His name is Justinian. He is not born into royalty, not born into power. He grows up speaking Latin in the Balkan countryside. His uncle, Justinus, claws his way into the imperial court and becomes emperor himself. From there, Justinian is elevated, educated, polished, prepared, and when his uncle dies, Justinian takes the throne. He will rule, not as a caretaker, but as a visionary. He dreams of one thing: restoration, not of peace, not of wealth, but of Rome itself, a single empire, a single law, a single ruler. But dreams are not built in silence, they are forged in fire. Justinian begins with the law. Over centuries, Rome's legal code had grown tangled. Endless decrees, contradictions, traditions buried under dust. So Justinian commissions the Corpus Juris Civilis, the body of civil law, a grand compilation, clear, cohesive, timeless. It becomes the foundation for law in the Byzantine Empire, and later for much of Europe. Even today, echoes of it remain in modern justice. But Justinian is not finished. He turns his eyes westward to the lands that once wore Rome's name, now ruled by Goths, Vandals, and Franks. He sends forth generals, none more legendary than Belisarius, young, brilliant, loyal. Belisarius sails to North Africa. There, he defeats the Vandals in stunning speed, restoring Roman control over Carthage. Then, he marches into Italy, fights for years against the Ostrogoths. Cities taken, lost, then taken again. It is brutal, but piece by piece, Rome's western lands return to the imperial fold. For a fleeting moment, the Mediterranean is a Roman lake once more. But at home, another fire burns. In 532 CE, Constantinople erupts into chaos. It begins with chariot races. The two major teams, blues and greens, represent more than sport. They are factions. They are politics. They are identity. A dispute sparks a riot. It spreads like flame. The crowds chant, Nika, victory. They burn the city. They declare a rival emperor. Justinian considers fleeing. But then, Theodora speaks. She is not a typical empress. She had once been an actress, a performer, a woman of the stage. She had risen through brilliance and will. And now, she stands beside Justinian, not as a wife, but as a partner in rule. She tells him, those who have worn the crown should never survive its loss. Royalty is a fine burial shroud. He stays, and the rebellion is crushed. Thousands die. The city burns. But from the ashes, Justinian rebuilds. And in that rebuilding, he creates a marvel. Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom. Its great dome rises into the heavens, floating like a cloud held by light. To walk inside is to feel the sky descend, to hear voices echo from stone and gold. It becomes not just a church, but a symbol of faith, of empire, of ambition. Still, Justinian's wars strain the treasury. Plagues arrive, waves of sickness that sweep across cities. The plague of Justinian, they call it. Tens of thousands die in Constantinople. Some say Justinian himself falls ill and survives, barely. By the end of his reign, the western territories, won in blood, begin to slip away. But the legacy remains. Justinian did not restore the empire forever, but he reminded the world. Rome was not just dust and ruins. It was still a dream worth chasing, and in its pursuit, he gave birth to something new. The Byzantine Empire, Greek-speaking, Christian, rooted in Roman law and tradition, but its own distinct world. For nearly 1,000 more years, this empire will endure, long after the Caesars, long after the Colosseum falls to ivy. It will guard Rome's legacy in shimmering mosaics, in sacred texts, in domes that glow like dawn. Sleep now beneath the great dome of Hagia Sophia. Let gold and candlelight fill your dreams. Let the name Justinian pass like a whispered promise. Rome has changed, but it is not forgotten. Sleep gently now as the candles flicker low in distant chapels. The mighty dome of Hagia Sophia stands still under the night sky, but on the horizon, change is coming again, not with the crack of swords, but with the whisper of revelation. The world beyond Byzantium stirs, and soon the empire will face a challenge like no other. It begins not in Rome, not in Constantinople, but in the deserts of Arabia. In a quiet cave near Mecca, a merchant named Muhammad meditates, and one night he hears a voice, the first verse of a message that will change the course of history. A new religion is born, Islam, a call to worship one God, to live with justice, discipline, and unity. A revelation that grows with breathtaking speed. By the time Justinian's empire begins to fade, Islam is spreading swiftly, not just as faith, but as force. Tribes unite under belief, and a caliphate rises. In the early 7th century, as Byzantine emperors debate policy in marble halls, the Muslim armies march quickly, fiercely, faithfully. They take Syria, Palestine, Egypt, even parts of Persia, lands that had once bowed to Rome, now bow in prayer facing Mecca. The speed is stunning. The losses are devastating. The Byzantine Empire, long confident behind its walls and culture, now finds its southern front shattered. And then, in 674 CE, a fleet sets out across the sea. Their goal, Constantinople. For the first time, the city faces a siege by sea. But the Byzantines have a secret, a weapon feared by all who see it, Greek fire, a burning liquid that clings to water, that sticks to ships, that cannot be extinguished. With it, they defend the city. The siege is lifted, the empire survives, but barely. Years pass. The armies of Islam turn their attention eastward, but the Byzantines know they will return. A new emperor rises, Leo III. In 717 CE, the city faces a second siege. Once again, Constantinople holds. Once again, the walls stand strong. And once again, Greek fire lights the dark waves. The city endures. But the empire has changed. Much of its wealthiest land is gone. Its language, once Latin, is now almost entirely Greek. Its religion, once woven with Roman gods, is deeply and purely Christian. Even the name Roman Empire fades. Now, to most of the world, it is known simply as Byzantium. Inside, debates rage about icons, about images of Christ and saints. Should they be honored, or are they idolatry? These iconoclast controversies divide the empire. Churches are stripped of art, priests exiled, even families torn apart. It is not just an empire at war with others, but with itself. And yet, through it all, Byzantium survives. Smaller, stronger, more guarded. Its capital, Constantinople, becomes a fortress of faith. Scholars write, monks copy texts, architects build. The city glows with gold and incense. Even as the west falls into darkness, the east protects the flame of learning. But the empire is not what it was. Gone are the days of Roman legions marching across 3 continents. Gone are the emperors who ruled from Britain to Babylon. Now it is preservation, not expansion, defense, not domination. And in this quieter phase, the empire begins to change not just in shape, but in spirit. Sleep now, to the sound of oars gliding across the Bosporus. Let the glow of oil lamps flicker in quiet chambers. Let the call to prayer echo far away, peaceful, persistent. The Roman Empire is still here, but it no longer looks west. It looks inward. It looks east. It endures because it adapts. Let the city breathe. Let the sea calm. Let your thoughts float across moonlit waters. It is the 11th century now, and Constantinople still stands, firm, proud, golden. But beyond its walls, the world is shifting again. A new force is gathering, not to destroy Rome, but to save something sacred. That force calls itself the Crusade. The Byzantine Empire is no longer the titan it once was. It has survived centuries of loss, siege, and civil strife. But its walls, its great towering Theodosian walls, still hold strong. Behind them, the last Roman emperors still wear purple, still speak of glory, still hold councils and cross themselves before battle. To the west, however, a different world has formed. The old Western Roman Empire has given way to kingdoms. Franks, Normans, Germans. They have their own kings, their own churches, and now their own armies of faith. In 1095 CE, a call goes out from the Pope in Rome. He speaks not of Caesar, but of Christ. He asks for warriors to retake the Holy Land, Jerusalem, lost to Muslim rulers. Thousands answer, knights, lords, peasants, pilgrims. They sew crosses to their cloaks. They march east, and they stop first in Constantinople. The emperor at the time, Alexios I Komnenos, welcomes them carefully. He needs help. His empire is pressed on all sides by Seljuk Turks, by rebellious provinces, by fading strength. But these Western warriors, they are unfamiliar. They are brave, but wild. They bring their own ideas, their own ambitions. They help Alexios recover lost lands, but they do not take orders for long. The Crusaders push east, and eventually they take Jerusalem. In 1099 CE, the First Crusade succeeds. For a time, Byzantium breathes easier, but the peace is fragile. Crusaders establish their own kingdoms. They do not return land to Constantinople. They build their own castles, name their own kings. The alliance becomes uneasy. Decades pass. More crusades come. Some fail. Some wander. And then comes the most painful blow of all. In 1204 CE, during the Fourth Crusade, things take a dark turn. The Crusaders do not march on Jerusalem. They never reach the Holy Land. Instead, they are diverted by debts, by politics, by ambition. They arrive again at Constantinople, but this time they come not as guests, but as conquerors. The greatest Christian city in the world is attacked by fellow Christians. The gates are breached, the palace is looted, The church is desecrated. Hagia Sophia is torn open, gold melted, relics stolen. Nuns are assaulted, statues shattered. For 3 days, the Crusaders pillage the city. It is one of the most brutal betrayals in Roman history, and when it ends, Constantinople is no longer Byzantine. It becomes the center of a new empire, the short-lived Latin Empire, ruled by the West. But the Byzantines are not finished. In 1261 CE, they take back their city, weakened, scarred, but theirs. The emperor, Michael VIII Palaiologos, enters in silence. He lights candles. He bows at shattered altars. The city is theirs, again, but it is not the same. Much of its wealth is gone. Its army is thin. Its neighbors grow stronger. The empire is now a shadow of what it was. And yet, the walls still stand. The churches still echo. The mosaics still glow. But even the strongest walls cannot keep out time. Sleep now, under torchlight glowing on broken stone. Let the waters of the Golden Horn lull you. Let the Crusader banners fade into fog. The empire has endured betrayal, fire, and loss, but it still draws breath. What happens next waits just beyond the gates. The sea is still. The moonlight lays silver over stone and domes, and within the thick walls of Constantinople, candles flicker for what may be the last time. Close your eyes now. Let the city rise before you, tired, fragile, but unbowed. For more than 1,000 years, it has stood as the heir of Rome, through fire, through faith, through siege and betrayal. But now, the end is near. It is 1453 CE. The world has changed. Gunsmoke drifts where once marched legions, and at the edge of the Bosporus, a new power has risen. Young, bold, relentless. The Ottoman Empire, and at its head, Mehmed II, just 21 years old, but brilliant, ambitious, determined to take the city his ancestors had failed to conquer. Within Constantinople, all is still. Emperor Constantine the Fetzing Palaiologos prepares his city for the coming storm. He has only a few thousand soldiers, a handful of ships, little hope of rescue. The Western kingdoms send prayers, but no armies. The emperor knows what he faces, but he does not flee. He walks the walls. He speaks to the people. He opens the palace treasury, paying soldiers himself. He calls Greeks, Genoese, Venetians, all who will stand with him, and together they prepare. For 57 days, the Ottomans pound the walls with cannon fire, new weapons for a new age. The walls of Theodosius, which had turned away Persians, Arabs, Slavs, and Crusaders, now begin to crack. On the morning of May 29th, the final assault begins. Before dawn, drums thunder. The ground shakes. Wave after wave crashes against the gates. The defenders fight with all they have. Arrows, boiling oil, desperate courage. But the walls give way, and the Ottomans pour in. The emperor fights in the streets. He removes his purple robe, takes up his sword, and disappears into the final charge. He dies, unnamed among his people, a Roman to the very last breath. The city falls. Hagia Sophia, the great jewel of Byzantium, becomes a mosque. The crosses are lowered, the icons covered. The call to prayer echoes for the first time from its dome. The Roman Empire, in all its forms, Republic, Empire, Byzantium, is gone. After 150 years, its story has closed, or has it? Because something remains. The ideas of Rome do not fall with the walls. Its laws shape modern justice. Its architecture stands in cities across the world. Its language echoes in science, medicine, and poetry. Its faith survives in cathedrals and candles. Its memory lives on, not as a ruin, but as a foundation. Rome never truly ended. It became legend. It became inspiration. It became us, and so tonight, as the final pages close, let your thoughts wander one last time through marble corridors, across ancient bridges, through temples and forums, palaces and battlefields. Let the emperors speak softly in your dreams. Let the arches rise once more. Let the eagle stretch its wings. The empire may have fallen, but the story, that may never truly end. The streets of Constantinople are quiet now. The banners have changed. The bells are gone. But not everything is lost. Let your mind drift slowly now, not into ruins, but into echoes. Rome may have fallen, but its spirit, it has not slept. In Europe, in monasteries tucked between misty hills, monks sit by candlelight, copying texts written centuries before. Virgil, Cicero, Seneca, their words preserved. Laws and histories passed hand to hand from Rome to the Renaissance. The Latin language, once spoken across the empire, is still whispered in prayers, still carved into walls, still used in science, in medicine, in philosophy. Even as kingdoms rise, Franks, Saxons, Normans, each carries something of Rome within them. In the West, a bishop in Rome takes on a new title, Pope, and though his palace is small, his influence begins to grow. He speaks in Latin, wears robes that echo the old senatorial class, and from the ruins of empire, the Catholic Church rises. It becomes a new kind of Rome, not of soldiers, but of saints. Meanwhile, in the East, the Orthodox Church continues to chant in Greek. Their icons are kissed. Their priests speak in tongues, heard by emperors long gone. Their cathedrals rise, small Romes in every village. And then, a new fire kindles. In Florence, Venice, Milan, artists begin to sculpt again, paint again, study again. They look to the past, to columns, to domes, to harmony in form. The Renaissance is born, literally, the rebirth. Of what? Of Rome. Leonardo da Vinci sketches the Vitruvian Man, based on a Roman architect. Michelangelo studies ancient statues before carving David. Brunelleschi builds domes by studying the Pantheon. Painters, poets, and thinkers call themselves humanists, just as Cicero once did. They wear togas, revive Latin, rebuild forums, on canvas, in marble, in thought, even in law. Rome breathes. The Justinian Code, written centuries earlier, becomes the base for European legal systems. In universities, young men study it. In courts, judges reference it. It becomes the foundation for civil law, still used in many countries today. In language, Rome is everywhere. Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, all born from Latin. Even English, though Germanic at heart, carries thousands of Roman words We still speak of justice, virtue, empire, citizen, as if the empire never left us. And in architecture, Rome's ghost is solid. Domes, arches, columns, seen in banks, churches, universities, capitals, even in distant lands. Washington, D.C., London, Berlin, cities build their power in the shape of Rome. And what of the idea? The idea that power can be lawful, that people can be citizens, that a state can serve something greater. These ideas flow into the Enlightenment, into the French Revolution, into the founding of the United States, into every republic that came after. Senates, elections, legal codes, all whispering, "We remember Rome." Sleep now, beneath stars that have shone over Rome and beyond. Let the sound of turning pages lull you. Let the statues of old smile quietly in your dreams. The empire may have ended, but its story is still being written. And perhaps you are part of it too. The city of Rome is quiet now. Its palaces are ruins. Its senate sits empty. But the idea of Rome has not been buried. Let your thoughts rest gently on the page of history now turning. Let your breath rise like banners over old walls, because even when Rome was no more, others still reached for its name. They called themselves the New Rome. The first to try was a man crowned far from Rome's golden statues, not an emperor, but a king. In the year 800 CE, on Christmas Day, in a grand cathedral in Rome, a tall, broad-shouldered warrior knelt. His name, Charlemagne, king of the Franks, ruler of much of Western Europe. And as he prayed, the Pope placed a golden crown on his head and said, "To Charles Augustus, crowned by God, Emperor of the Romans." The crowd gasped, the church echoed, and Rome was reborn, or so it seemed. This was not the old empire. It had new faces, new languages, new customs. But Charlemagne ruled with Roman law. He spoke Latin. He built schools, roads, monasteries, and across Europe, people called it the Holy Roman Empire. It would last, in name, for 1,000 years. Yet even as Charlemagne's empire rose, another claim stirred far away. In the snow-covered forests of the east, the city of Moscow, once a small trading post, began to grow, and its rulers, called czars from the word Caesar, looked to Byzantium. They had married into Byzantine blood. They had inherited its religion, Orthodox Christianity. They had adopted its art, its ritual, its gold-draped liturgy. When Constantinople fell in 1453, Moscow declared, "The first Rome has fallen. The second, Constantinople, has fallen. The third Rome is Moscow, and there shall be no fourth." The Rabbah title Rome was not just about land. It was about authority, order, destiny. To be Rome was to mean something more than power. It meant civilization itself. In time, others would chase that name. Napoleon crowned himself in Paris and called his empire a new Roman order. The British, with colonies across the seas, claimed to bring Roman law and reason. Even America, when it built its capital, shaped its buildings in columns and domes. It called its government a senate, its president a commander-in-chief, its founders republicans in the Roman sense. Rome had become not just a place, but a model, a mirror, a goal. Its ruins spoke louder than its armies ever had, and yet, with each imitation, something faded too. The new Romes copied the form, but not always the spirit. Where the old Rome blended cultures, some new Romes divided them. Where the old Rome adapted, some clung too tightly to the past. And so, the idea continued to drift, not settling in any one city, but floating, timeless, waiting, because maybe Rome was never meant to rise again as it once was. Maybe its greatness was not in conquest, but in how it could be remembered, interpreted, rewoven, generation after generation. Sleep now, with the stars shining over Moscow's onion domes, over Berlin's triumphal arches, over Washington's marble columns. The names may change, the rulers may fall, but the memory of Rome, the desire to be Rome, still flickers in the halls of power, still lingers in the language of law, still beats softly in every idea of empire, order, unity. The emperors are gone, the banners have fallen, the legions no longer march, but the city remains, not as capital, but as memory. Close your eyes. Let the wind move softly through crumbling arches. Let the moonlight touch the worn face of statues. This is Rome, still standing. Centuries have passed since Caesar's voice echoed in the Forum, since senators debated beneath the dome of power, since soldiers returned in triumph, garlands in their hair, dust on their cloaks. The empire fell, but the city did not. It bent, it broke, it burned, but it never disappeared. Even when kings ruled from other lands, pilgrims came to see where it all began. They walked through overgrown roads, whispered prayers at pagan ruins, ran fingers along Latin inscriptions. They stood beneath the Pantheon, its dome uncracked, its oculus open to the sky, and marveled that it still stood. Just as it had under Hadrian, Rome became a place of reflection, of reverence, not the city of power, but the city of origin. The Colosseum, though hollowed, still rose. No lions inside now, just light and silence. The Forum, once buzzing with voices, was quiet, like a poem written in ruins. Temples to Jupiter and Venus faded, but new churches rose, built with their stones. By the Middle Ages, the old city had shrunk. Sheep grazed where once stood statues of gods. Huts leaned against ancient columns. Grass pushed up through marble. And yet, pilgrims still came. They came not for emperors, but for Peter, for Paul, for relics and crosses, for the church, and with them came hope. By the 1400s, the Renaissance had begun to breathe life back into the city. Artists arrived with sketchbooks, poets with notebooks, architects with eyes wide open. They looked at the ruins and saw blueprints. They saw balance in broken arches, beauty in fallen capitals. They whispered, "Rome is not dead, she is sleeping." And so, Rome was reborn again, not with legions, but with art. Michelangelo sculpted Moses, carved from marble, that once paved a Roman bath. Raphael painted philosophers in togas, giving Plato and Aristotle a Roman home. Bramante and others raised domes, studying the Pantheon as teacher and temple. Even St. Peter's Basilica, the heart of Christendom, was built from the skeleton of empire. Rome became the world's greatest museum, not just of objects, but of ideas. And even now, as cars hum past the Colosseum, as tourists lean into fountains, as locals sip espresso beside 2,000-year-old bricks, Rome is still alive, not in power, not in borders, but in presence. It is a place that holds time like a scroll, layer upon layer, century upon century. Walk its streets, and you walk through ages, empire, church, Renaissance, republic. You're never far from a ghost, from a memory, from a voice once shouted in Latin beneath the sun. Sleep now, with the city resting beside you. Let its 7 hills rise in your dreams. Let its roads stretch beyond the edge of memory. Let it remind you, Rome is not just history. It is a place that has survived history. And somewhere in its quiet corners, a voice still murmurs. A voice once heard by emperors, martyrs, artists, and dreamers. A voice that says, nothing built with heart is ever truly lost. Let the night settle around you. Let the winds grow quiet. Let the long road of history finally come to rest. This is the end of a journey, not of soldiers or senators, but of story, the story of Rome. We began with kings on muddy hills, with shepherds, with twins beneath a wolf's warm breath. Then came the Republic, bold, complex, imperfect, a place where law stood taller than any man. Then came Empire, wide as the world, heavy with gold, loud with victory and sorrow. We saw wisdom. We saw madness. We saw flames rise and marble fall. We watched the West collapse. We followed the East as it fought to endure. We heard the call of new faiths, the beat of foreign drums, the clash of walls and cannon, and then we listened to the silence. But silence is not absence. Silence is space. And in that space, Rome continued. You see it every day, in our buildings, arched, columned, rising, in our languages, echoing Latin syllables across the globe, in our laws, written, argued, upheld, in our symbols, eagles, laurels, scales. We speak of republics, of senates, of rights and citizens, and constitutions. We measure in miles. We mark calendars in BC and AD. We read from alphabets born on Roman scrolls. We name our planets, Mars, Jupiter, Venus, after their gods. We name our children, Julius, Marcus, Claudia, after their people. And sometimes, without knowing why, we walk into a grand building and feel awe, because Rome built that sense into stone itself. But Rome isn't just in monuments, it's in motion, in the ambition to build something larger than a single life, to leave something behind, to shape the world with thought, with tools, with courage. Rome is not a place anymore. It is a pattern, a thread, a legacy, not perfect, not eternal, but unforgettable. So now, as you lay back into rest, you're not stepping away from history. You are part of it. The words you speak, the books you read, the cities you walk through, they all carry the weight of what came before. They carry Rome. And maybe that's the point. Not that empires rise forever, but that they leave behind stories that last, stories that teach us, warn us, inspire us, stories that say, you too can shape the world. So sleep now, not with the fear of endings, but with the comfort of memory, of knowing that some things, like courage and beauty and ideas, outlive the walls that held them. You've walked with emperors, you've stood under domes, you've heard the chants of victory and loss, and now you rest. Rome has reached its final chapter, but you still carry the book. Good night, Ave Roma, and thank you for listening.